Hello and a warm welcome to Africa Focus, a special news program on Switch TV, Kenya's #1 youth television channel, coming to you from Kenya's capital, Nairobi. My name is Cherotich Bernadette, and our sign language interpreter today is Mr. Michael Maithia. Now, here are the stories that are making headlines.
Tanzanian President John Magufuli questions his country's coronavirus numbers. Vendors in Eastleigh, Nairobi, Kenya, worried about the cessation of movement in that area.
Now let's take a look at the stories making headlines around the continent.
Madagascar delivered to Guinea-Bissau a shipment of a herbal tea that President Andry Rajoelina has touted as a powerful remedy against the novel coronavirus and hopes to distribute across West Africa and beyond. Baptized COVID Organics, the drink is derived from Artemisia, a plant with proven efficiency in malaria treatment and other indigenous herbs. Guinea-Bissau's self-proclaimed president was at the airport to oversee reception of the cargo donated by Madagascar. Guinea-Bissau is the second country to take delivery of the potion that Madagascar claims cures COVID-19 patients within 10 days. Embalo has said that he will test the potion from Madagascar on leading government members, including the Premier. Equatorial Guinea, meanwhile, announced that it will distribute the potion to infected people in hospitals during 2 weeks and in its preventive version to everybody else. Back in Madagascar, unarmed soldiers have been doing door-to-door in the capital, Antananarivo, handing out COVID organics. Traffic and pedestrians are seen walking in the capital Tunis streets as Tunisian authorities begin a gradual sector and region-based disconfinement process to find a balance between socio-economic needs and preservation of health. The Tunisian government established a system in 3 stages, hoping to fully restart the country by June. Rwanda will partially lift its virus lockdown from next week and allow people to move freely during the day more than 6 weeks after being confined. Rwanda was one of the first to impose strict lockdown measures in Africa when it had only 19 cases and to date has officially recorded 225 cases and 0 deaths. Citizens are now allowed to move freely from 5 a.m. to 8 p.m. and will need permission to do so later in the evening. Business, manufacturing and construction operations will be allowed to resume with essential workers, while markets will be allowed to open with no more than 50% of traders operating. According to the statement, hotels and restaurants will be allowed to operate but must close by 7 p.m. People will be allowed to exercise in open spaces, but sports facilities will remain closed. No more than 30 people will be allowed to attend funerals, and schools, churches, gyms, and bars will remain closed. Transport between different provinces is still banned, borders remain closed, and mass gatherings prohibited, and masks must be worn in public at all times.
All right, we kick off the program with East Africa. Now, Tanzanian President John Magufuli questions his country's coronavirus numbers and calls on the authorities to investigate the national laboratory where he says a papaya tested positive. The East African country had recorded 480 cases of the virus and 16 deaths in its last update.
Tanzanian President John Magufuli questioned his country's coronavirus numbers and called on the authorities to investigate sabotage at the national laboratory. The government has come under fire from the opposition from allegedly hiding information and failing to take the disease seriously. Tanzania is one of a few countries in Africa that have not taken extensive measures against the virus, and Magufuli is among a handful of world leaders still playing down the seriousness of the disease. Schools and universities have been shut, but markets, bus stops, and shops operate as usual, with Magufuli urging citizens to continue working hard and not stop going to church or mosque. He criticized a Muslim leader who shut a large mosque in Dar es Salaam as a precaution against the spread of the virus.
How could you stop your fellow believers from going to church to praise God, or Muslims from going to mosque? Mosque which you never even contributed anything to build. If you don't feel comfortable or safe going to mosque or church, then stay at home. with your family and leave those who are willing to go and praise God to do so, rather than you trying to lock the doors.
Magufuli said that people who tested positive for the virus may not be sick and cast doubt on the credibility of laboratory equipment and technicians. He said he had secretly had a variety of animals, fruits and vehicle oil tested at the laboratory. According to Magufuli, a papaya, a quail and a goat tested positive, and he suspects dirty game in the laboratory.
When we took a purple sample for a COVID-19 test, we labeled the sample as Elizabeth Ann, aged 26, female. The result came out positive. This means those fluids inside the purple is coronavirus positive, something which is totally insane.
Magufuli was swearing in the new Minister for Constitution and Legal Affairs, and urged him to go and investigate if there is criminal possibility in the National Laboratory and take action. Nchemba is taking over after the death of Augustine Mahiga, one of the 3 MPs who died in the space of 11 days. No reasons were given for the lawmakers' deaths. Magufuli also said Tanzania was in talks with Madagascar for a portion that the island nation claims cures COVID-19 patients within 10 days.
We are already in touch with Madagascar. They wrote us an official letter informing us about their cure. We shall send our airplane to go and pick the drugs, so as our citizens can also reap the benefits. So as a government, we have been working tirelessly day and night to support our people.
Now, I must say it's quite interesting to hear that a popo named Elizabeth did test positive of coronavirus in Tanzania. But moving to the west of Africa, in Abuja, Nigerians who do not respect safety measures in place to curb the coronavirus pandemic are arrested by a COVID-19 task force and prosecuted through mobile court. The lockdown was relaxed to enable residents to work, but with strict instructions to comply with the restrictions and safety rules, including the mandatory wearing of face masks and social distancing.
The mobile courts activated by the Federal Capital Territory Administration has prosecuted no fewer than 156 violators of the stay-at-home presidential order aimed at curtailing the spread of COVID-19 in the country. Wadata Bodinga, the director, FST Directorate of Road Traffic Services, said that the court started sitting on April 16, 2020 in Dantata and Mpape, Abuja. He said the mobile courts presided over by a magistrate have continued to try violators of the COVID-19 in the country.
We are here to enforce our presidential order and directive on COVID-19 restriction. You know, we had a relaxation of the lockdown, and since then we've been enforcing some other components of the restriction order that the President Commander-in-Chief actually gave. One, to check interstate movement, which we also do here, as well as other restrictions.
He said a total of 50 cases were prosecuted on the first day, out of which 40 people were convicted, while 10 others were discharged. Similarly, Mr. Bodinga said during the second and third days, 106 offenders were prosecuted. Mr. Bodinga explained that the trial involves pedestrians, motorists and motorcyclists caught violating the order. Some of the convicts were fined various sums, while others had their vehicles impounded and sentenced to community service.
We also took an issue of overloading, which is very worrisome. For overloading, we always take them to mobile court. But in some instances where we see women and vulnerable groups like children and others who are weak, we stop them and ensure that what we do is that we reduce the population of instances.
Therefore, appealed to residents to comply with the lockdown order to avoid arrest and prosecution. Abia State government says it has set up mobile courts in 3 states to try offenders of the ongoing lockdown of the state.
For now, we are getting persons who do not wear face masks to actually stop. And now we have not carried so much of them to the mobile court. We are getting them to understand why they should get face masks, and they are hurriedly getting the face masks here.
All residents were requested to remain steadfast and committed to the fight against COVID-19 by cooperating with the security agencies, state and local government enforcement teams as they implement the lockdown order.
Now moving back home here in Kenya, vendors react to the announcement by Kenya's health minister that the area of Eastleigh in the capital of Nairobi will be cordoned off due to skyrocketing cases of coronavirus in the area.
Kenya's health minister announced one area of the capital Nairobi as well as a part of the port city of Mombasa will be cordoned off due to skyrocketing cases of coronavirus in those areas. Cases of the virus have crept up slowly in Kenya as in many other African countries. However, in recent days, it has become clear the virus is fast spreading in several hotspots.
Move anywhere, so the people of Eastleigh here are suffering. Most of the people of Eastleigh are poor people. We're just having some problems like people depending on working.
Health Minister Mutahi Kagwe said for the next 15 days there shall be cessation of movement in and out of Eastleigh and Mombasa's Old Town. Kenya has stopped short of ordering a full lockdown like many of its neighbors. Observers have warned to do so will be a disaster for the millions of urban poor who live hand to mouth in slums in the capital.
Like nobody moving out and inside from Eastleigh, and there is no business. Here we are people somewhere, and there is no traveling, there is no work. Even the people that are working inside the house, they are not working. There is a big problem. They call the coronavirus lockdown here, and we don't see that coronavirus they are talking about.
The country has imposed a dusk to dawn curfew and block movement in and out of Nairobi, 3 coastal towns and the northeastern county of Mandera. However, while nations that did confine their populations like Mauritius, Rwanda and Uganda are starting to ease restrictions as new cases flatten out, Kenya has seen a jump in cases in recent days. The Kenyan government also announced that it will shoulder all the costs of quarantine as citizens have resisted taking free tests out of fear that if they are positive, they'll have to pay for their own isolation and treatment.
Now continue interacting with us through our social media handles at Switch TV Kenya on Facebook and on Twitter. Send us free SMSs on 22999. Give us your 2 cents about the show. We're going to take a short break for now. However, take a look at what's coming up after the break.
South African capital showcases special infection unit ambulance for transport of coronavirus patients.
Welcome back to the show. Now, the Kenya Red Cross Society has today donated non-food items to over 500 displaced by the destructive floods in Western Kenya. Western Kenya is among the hardest hit areas with floods following the ongoing heavy rains being experienced across the country. Other areas hit hard by are Gatundu South, Tharaka Nithi and Murang'a that continue to experience landslides as well as displacement of families in several counties such as Marsabit, Tana River, Kakamega, among others. The donation is meant to cushion families affected during this time of the pandemic as county governments in partnership with the national government plan on long-term relief solutions for the affected families.
As Kenya Red Cross, we've come to support the families that were affected by the floods. We're having around more than 500 households that were displaced. And today we are supporting them with non-food items. And the non-food items contain tarpaulin, blankets, kitchen set, soap. And we'll continue working with them in sensitizing them on COVID awareness and hygiene promotion.
Saa hizi vile nimesimama hapa, biashara yangu imesimama kwa ajili sina mahali ya kufanyia hiyo biashara. Nimekaa tu kwa barabara na vitu zangu hizo. Kwa jimi nauza sikuma, nyanya, nini na hii viazi, ndizi. Saa hizi siwezi nikaenda nilete niuze kwa ajili tuko juu ya maji.
Quite commendable for companies and institutions like Red Cross who are helping those who are displaced. Now, Moving on, despite a sharp increase in coronavirus cases in Nigeria, Africa's most populous country, many of Lagos's 20 million inhabitants say that they're relieved to be able to return to work after 5 weeks of strict confinement.
Africa's biggest city, Lagos, got back to work at the end of a 5-week coronavirus lockdown. In the city of 20 million, relief at being able to earn money once again was almost palpable, despite Nigeria's mounting COVID-19 toll. All shops seemed to be open, car parks were full, and hawkers selling cool drinks, grilled meat and vegetables were pitching their goods on streets corners as before.
Yes, there are a lot of people outside, but the road is free. A lot of people outside because people need to do their normal transaction. Meanwhile, because of the lockdown, there's no transaction. That's why the bank is filled up.
Minibus stations were as busy as before the lockdown, although tourists wore masks as they called out to passengers. Nigeria follows South Africa, the continent's other economic giant, which returned to work too. Many people say they were glad to be back earning money because nearly 200 million population live on equivalent of less than one per day. For those without savings or working in the informal sector, the lockdown was a cruel blow.
I have different style, so if you want to buy, it's a big suffering. I suffer a lot, I cannot eat. So there's no food, there's no money to buy food. So today I'm happy that they say we should come outside. They say we should close by 3 p.m. Yes, that's what they told us. The government said we should close by 3 p.m. So I'm happy that we are out today.
From the toll gates and area bordering Ogun State, a long queue of passengers waited to board. Security agents and transport union officials were on hand to ensure drivers complied with directive requiring social distance, face mask and washing, and use of hand sanitizers before boarding. Huge number of people rushed to the reopened banks to get money. Many did not have an ATM card to draw from a cash machine.
The main challenges today is that since morning that we open, there's no customers, and we see that because people have exhausted all the money they have, that's why everywhere is dry now. There's no customers. There's no customer that comes to patronize us.
Perfect, we don't keep debts.
The relaxation has triggered deep concern in some quarters, given how easily the coronavirus spread and the poor state of Nigeria's health system. But as elsewhere, the true scale of pandemic could be much greater, given the paucity of testing.
Now, the king of Sanwi, based in the southeast of Ivory Coast, holds a special exorcism ceremony seeking divine intervention to protect his 3 million subjects against the coronavirus pandemic.
An aide to an influential king in Ivory Coast has said the monarch could order a procession of naked women to ward off coronavirus by seeking the protection of spirits. The king of Sanwi, resplendent in gold and draped in colorful tribal woven cloth, arrived for the ceremony, the village of Krinjabo, the capital of the kingdom, to the beating of tam-tam drums. He held a special exorcism ceremony last week seeking divine intervention to protect his 3 million subjects against the epidemic.
Parce que la science ne peut pas tout régler.
Because science can't fix everything, it just can't. Take, for example, the virus. The little virus that we don't see, that silences everybody. Those that we call powerful, less powerful, and so on. Everybody is at the same level. Everybody hides. Today, if everybody hides, we are weak. This is a message that God is giving us.
Donc, nous sommes faibles. Dieu se...
Traditional kings and local chieftains have great authority, and the event would normally have been attended by hundreds, but due to coronavirus restrictions keeping gatherings to less than 50 people, a handful turned up. traditional women healers dressed in white purified the royal court by sprinkling alcohol to the strains of Abudan, a traditional beat.
Conformément à la coutume,
in accordance with the custom, he is going to implore, he is going to make a libation so that God will make this disease disappear for good.
Dieu fasse en sorte que cette maladie finisse définitivement, disparaisse définitivement. Que nous ayons...
So we would have to do some soul searching. After this examination of conscience, we can then address the Almighty, because there is God and the King. That is why the King makes the liberation, a prayer to God, a prayer to the ancestors, those who see the unseen, of being able then to help us, to save our life. Otherwise, it will be the disappearance of the whole world.
Such ceremonies are held to ward off natural disasters such as droughts or floods. Ivory Coast has more than 1,000 cases of the new coronavirus with 14 deaths, and the government has reaped in traditional rulers to enforce social distancing and other measures. The procession is kept secret until the previous day, when royal announcer goes through the village to say when it will take place.
Truly some interesting traditions from Ivory Coast we have there. Now moving to the south of Africa, Pretoria Emergency Medical Service in South Africa has rolled out its first special infection unit ambulance. It has an isolation chamber at the back, initially created to transport patients with drug-resistant TB, anthrax and Ebola. But now it is also being used to safely transport COVID-19 patients. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa has won praise for his response to the coronavirus outbreak. Now he is risking public backlash after some members of his cabinet reversed some of his measures and made racially charged statements. South Africa identified its first case of the virus in March 5th and imposed a stringent lockdown 3 weeks later, shutting down schools and businesses and confining everyone but essential workers to their homes. With just over 7,000 confirmed cases out of the population of 59 million people and one of Africa's most widespread testing programs, Ramaphosa's health policy appears to be paying
What it
off.
brings to the table is it decreases the staff's exposure to any infectious type of patient, because the only risk of infection is when the patient is being put into the isolation chamber. Once they're in the isolation chamber, the staff are protected. So you actually...
A normal ambulance is like you get a call from control center, you dispatch there, you already know what you're gonna get there. And then they're working here, you already know we're working with coronavirus. So at this moment, it's a higher risk. So you have to be extremely carefully. Unlike when you're working in the operation, you know that you put your gloves, then that's it. So, but here you have to put your mask, your full PPE, and then you have to be always focused. You don't work it.
Now on to some somber news. The Democratic Republic of Congo accuses Rwandan Hutu rebels of the Allied Democratic Forces of being responsible for the massacre of a dozen rangers in Virunga Park at the end of April. According to the results of a preliminary investigation, says Major General Maurice Arungu Mamba, commander of the Corps for the Protection of National Parks and related natural reserves.
Rwandan rebels active in DRC Congo's volatile east have denied killing 12 rangers and 5 others at Africa's oldest national park, a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and instead blamed Rwandan government troops.
Premier rapport d'enquête préliminaire qui confirme.
The first preliminary investigation report confirmed the action of a special crop unit that committed the act. The intelligence and the in-depth action compared of the FDL, Democratic Forces for the Liberation of Rwanda.
De renseignement et d'action en profondeur, des FDLR.
The The attack was one of the deadliest in the world-famous Virunga National Park. There have been no claims of responsibility. The Democratic Forces of the Liberation of Rwanda, a Hutu rebel group active in Eastern Democratic Republic of Congo, said it unconditionally condemned this cowardly attack, adding that it had nothing to do with these events.
Rangers must become professional to fulfill their role, given the major threat now facing natural resources, including armed groups and armed poaching.
Par la présence des groupes armés, le braconnage armé,
Management said it had precise indications that the FDLR was behind the attack near the park headquarters north of eastern city of Goma. The park, established in 1925, is spread over 7,800 square kilometers over the border of the Democratic Republic of Congo, Rwanda and Uganda. The Democratic Forces of the Liberation of Rwanda said that the site of the attack is under the control of Rwandan soldiers.
Le corps PPN,
The CORPPN, the ICCN, relies on the armed forces of the police to fulfill their mandate. This is what is currently done in Virunga Park and other parts. The armed forces are doing the operations.
Kagame denied persistent rumors that Rwandan soldiers had infiltrated into eastern DRC to fight the FDLR, whose leaders were involved in Rwanda's 1994 genocide that killed about 800,000 people. Visits to the park have been suspended for at least 30 days in DRC Congo's bid to halt the new coronavirus pandemic. The park also banned visitors between May 2018 to the start of last year after 2 British tourists were kidnapped there.
Well, that's it for today on Africa Focus, but keep the conversation going on our social media platforms at Switch TV Kenya on Twitter and Switch TV Kenya on Facebook. Send your SMSs to 22999 free of charge. A big thank you for watching. My name is Charity Bernadette. Our sign language interpreter today has been Mr. Michael Maithia. I want to remind you to maintain high standards of hygiene, stay at home and save lives. Till next time, goodbye.